Okay, so welcome to the first review here on Deep Chats. My name's Ian Beabout, and I'm joined here by my longtime friend and Deep Cuts co-host, Mike Lieto.
Hello, everyone. Ah!
I'm the crowd going wild.
Woo!
Woo! Okay, so for this first episode of Deep Chats, I thought we would review a band who I think they were in heavy rotation back in the Deep Cuts days. I can't remember exactly because it's been so long, but I feel like we listened to these guys a lot. We talked
We
about
totally
these guys a
did
lot.
play them. They're like, in a constant, like not constant, but they're in heavy rotation for me, for most of my life.
Sure, yeah. And the band, of course, that we're talking about is Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. And I guess if I were to try to explain Sleepytime Gorilla Museum's music to somebody who was interested in music, but didn't know anything about them, I would describe them as like Charles Ives death metal.
That's a good descriptor. I would kind of put them in like, as like avant-garde metal, but like with flashes of rock and opposition prog and flashes of like auxiliary percussion, like marching music. Like,
Sure.
It's like a big old melting pot. It's really unique.
Sure, and that when you say marching music, I mean that's like the Ivesian thing.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Again, like taking two bands and marching them together, playing a different song, like that. That sounds like a very Sleepytime prank.
Absolutely.
But so we'll just do like a brief like history of this band. I mean, I don't want to go through every record, but the one that stands out to me of their three previous, four including the live record, but the three previous releases, the one that stands out to me the most is Of Natural History. And you and I have kind of talked about how this album is one of the all-time great avant rock anything, rock and opposition albums. Like if I met an extraterrestrial and he said, please explain to me what Rio is, what rock and opposition is, I could hand him that album in the same pile of music with like Henry Cow, University Row, Magma, Frank Zappa. It's one of those just really great records because not only is it challenging, it's catchy, it's accessible, it gets under your skin. And so any Sleepytime Gorilla Museum album that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to be talking about in relation to that. Like I'm going to be comparing it to that. It's like the Empire Strikes Back of Sleepytime Gorilla Museum records. That being said, this new album, which is entitled Of the Last Human Being, it's just Of the Last Human Being. This new record,
their fourth studio album,
and their first in, this is 17 years, I think I had read.
It's something like that. So the band stopped in 2011, I believe.
Yes, in the middle of recording this.
Yeah, in 2020. They got back there last year and they did a huge like Kickstarter to try to raise money to go on tour and to make the album and press the vinyl. And they had this huge Kickstarter campaign and apparently got funded and then some.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
It was a huge success.
Yeah, it was a huge success. I was quite honestly really surprised to see the Kickstarter because I thought Sleepytime was never coming back. I'm like you in the way that like Of Natural History to me is like a full-on masterpiece. I don't use that very often, but that is a really tremendous piece of art, and it is like a wonderfully cohesive album. And they have, one thing we should also mention too about this band is they have like this this mythos around them that they've kind of self-ascribed. Like they use a lot of like futurist thought from like the 1910s and 20s, and on Natural History, like we won't have to talk about it too often. Or too much rather, but they like mix the futurist ideology with something that's like throwing away like technology and all of its woes, like the Unabomber and his writings, and just having like a donkey-headed monster fighting humanity because humans have gone too far, and like what if? It's a lot of thought experiments. Yeah. But there's like a mythos around that, plus a fictional museum. Like the band is a museum that opened and closed and that was the name of their first album, the grand opening and closing.
Yes.
And there's a lot of text on the albums that relate to that. There's none of that on this one, which some of you may appreciate, some of you may not.
Yeah, I mean, it in a sense, like if I were to compare this new record to something not necessarily musically, but just sort of in the way that it was made, I could compare this to Porcupine Tree's Closure Continuation, because that's another record that just kind of slowly dripped out over the course of like 10 years.
Yeah.
And then they finally got together and finished it like post-pandemic. Obviously, musically, it's very different. If I were to try to compare this band to, another artist, I might say like Mr. Bungle.
Yeah. It's probably the closest, but they really have their own thing going on.
They really have their own thing is right. And so first we'll kind of tell you about kind of who's in this band, like the lineup and how that's changed. So the lineup for this recording is Nils Frickedal, guitar and vocals, Carla Kilstedt, violin, percussion, guitar, bass, harmonica, vocals, Michael Melander, guitar, xylophone, trumpet, percussion, and vocals. Dan Rathbun, bass, dulcimer, vocals, and Matthias Bossi, drums, glockenspiel, xylophone, piano, backing vocals. Now, all of these folks have side projects that involve one another, and they've created this whole world revolving around the Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. But this is the first time in a long time that they've all been together, and kind of the content shows this, because if you look at the liner notes, like most of this was recorded in 2010, 2011. There's one song that was recorded around the time of Natural History, and Mo Staiano is a member. But oh man, I lost it. Cut.
Cut. There's an edit for us, huh?
Yes, we found our first edit.
Yeah. So Mo is on SPQR and nothing else, right?
That's correct. Yeah, and as a auxiliary percussionist, and I think I had in my notes that he's kind of the Jamie Muir to Matthias's Bill Bruford.
Right, I saw that. Yeah.
Like he's banging on pots and pans and assorted non-traditional percussion, and that's all part of that song's feel. So I thought, as a way of structuring this review, we could go track by track. And I kind of have some notes, and kind of hopefully the idea is here that we kind of inspire a discussion.
Yeah.
Along the way. So, okay, Salamander in Two Worlds. I remember reading about this in the liner notes, and this is about, I guess it's an indigenous American who just kind of popped out of the woods one day, and he was like the last man to fully live off the land, last uncivilized man, for lack of a better word. And there's a note where Nils says that he was born in the same hospital that he had died in. So this is like Oakland, California folklore.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
And it's cool that they're drawing from, who they are. It's similar to what my project did for our last album. Like we drew from mythology and local history and stuff. And I like that Sleepytime Gorilla Museum, because I don't remember them really doing that with stuff before, but I like that they're kind of writing about themselves a lot of times on this record, or their own history.
Yeah, I don't know if their third album, Inglorious Times, I don't know if there's a lot of stuff about them necessarily. They could be like mentioned in passing, but I know all the lyrics are written by one of the members' brother.
Oh, okay.
Maybe there could be some connection there, and some of it's like kind of cryptic lyrics. But this is really, like, you're right. Like, this is really the, in a way, like they're adding their folklore, where they're from and who they are into the music. We kind of haven't seen that before.
Yes, and that's something that I find, really draws me to this record. Because it carries a strong sense of identity. And like I know I'm already skipping ahead. I'm breaking with our
the format's broken already.
Formula. Yeah, I said we'll push it as far as it goes until it breaks, and here we are. It's already broken.
Pushed it 5 feet.
But I was going to comment the song El Evil, like this portrait that Nils paints in the liner notes about someone, I think they said it was Iago, is on stage dressed in a bunny costume. And there's a drunken man at the bar screaming, "Let the dog sing! Let the dog sing!" And
yeah, it's a guy, a friend of the band who plays in the band Idiot Flesh in the costume. The liner notes are terrific in this album, by the way, but if you have the CD like we do, they're woefully hard to read.
They're very hard to read.
This is the size of the font, and this is the nice little. The lyrics are easy to read, as you can see here. But if you have the vinyl, I'm sure you get a nice big printout of the liner notes. But this is what we got on the CD, which you could read it and it's fine.
Yeah.
The notes are very enlightening. However, it's hard to read on the CD.
However, if any inaccuracies in our relation of the liner notes are due to this fact,
yes, due to the
difficult
tiny
to read
print size, yes. But that story is hilarious for Ellie.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me of like a national health story where like they named the song called the Mind Your Backs Tango after like just carrying big old keyboards into the audience. Like they're going, mind your backs, was there the lead. It's hilarious. But for Salamander in Two Worlds, I think it's a killer opening. And I think the refrain is very catchy. The Salamander, like that shit is powerful and awesome. And for me, this song is like quintessential Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. Like this, like you press play on the album, you're like, oh man, they're back. Okay, let's go.
They don't waste any time, and it honestly does. It takes me back to, and I know I said I wasn't going to talk about earlier records too much, but it takes me back to how Inglorious Times starts. It kind of draws you in slowly, in a way that it's like, oh, they are back. Like it's a slow burn, but it feels like they're back. And into the second track, we're already kind of moving into again that Ivesian territory, because this to me is like European folk music meets marching band.
Yeah, it's like a demented klezmer, and I love this too. I love this little fanfare.
I do too. The Fanfare for the Last Human Being. Yeah, that's like one of those songs that or one of those pieces that just kind of makes me smile, because and almost in a way it reminds me like of something Zappa might do.
Yeah, totally.
Like the Mothers. It kind of takes me back to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's like a nice, like, Frank would call this eyebrows. Like this has tons of eyebrows.
Oh yeah. So much
like
personality.
Very silly. Yeah, the personality like pours out of this. It's so great.
And that's the other thing that I meant to say when you were talking about their deep mythology and all this stuff that is part of the work, is that it almost seems like it could be in danger of falling into the pretentious category, but they avoid that by being hilarious. Yeah,
you're totally right. It's not none of them. They never come up pretentious, and it's
no the farthest thing from it. Yeah, and I have in my notes theater of the American absurd. Like that's kind of how I view this material, is that it's like David Lynch films. Like it's
yeah.
I'm sure I'll make that comparison to everything. Everything's like David Lynch films. It's my favorite. But it's like capturing these little slices of American life and showing just how weird and beautiful it all is.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, that, you hit I think that phrase hits the nail on the head, like especially with the concept of the museum, right? Like, it's like a museum for that whole kind of thing. It's awesome.
I think the writers of Twin Peaks, David Lynch and Mark Frost, had described Twin Peaks as being about cataloging behavior. And when you talk about the museum, like that's almost what this reminds me of, is like cataloging American stories and folklore and just weird characters and ideas. And I also have a note here as we're getting into the second or third song that I remember when I first got into Sleepytime Gorilla Museum, my first album was Inglorious Times. And that is
the first one.
Yeah, that is a very heavy album with a lot of like, aggressive vocals.
Yeah, I now, as a, the person who I am now, loves that. When I first heard that album, I think I had a similar reaction you are about to say, and that it was, a little bit jarring at first. I think now Helpless Corpses Enactment is one of the most awesome things ever. But, back when we first heard that album, I was like, wow, what is this?
This is too much.
I didn't know how to process it. But now I like extreme vocals. So I was like, I'm about it now.
And that's sort of how like I made a comment here that what I like about this album as opposed to some of their others like Inglorious Times is that the extreme vocals are used in they're used sparingly in a way that makes them more effective.
Yeah,
so
100%.
when you get to those moments where he's screaming at you, it feels earned by the music. It doesn't feel arbitrary to me. And, I compared them to Opeth because when you watch like the Garden of the Titans Blu-ray by Opeth, Michael Ackerfeld sounds like he's two different people.
He's the best. Yeah.
And it's like that tension between the beauty and the horror, as they say in Dune. The beauty and the horror is the appeal to me. It's like that tension is what makes these bands special. And I would also say the same with Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. And then you add that Nils is also supplemented with Carla. She's such an amazing presence and in many ways like the side woman of the project, like the featured side woman of the project. And so, I like having her contrast for like those lullaby moments.
Yeah, she also like will harmonize with Nils on a lot of stuff, like in the Salamander chorus, and it is really awesome.
Yes, yes.
It is really awesome and powerful. Like the vocals, especially in this one, like are so well written and so well performed. It's nuts. I think I agree with you also with the way that like growling and extreme vocals are used. Like, it's like, to me, it's like a tonal color, right? If you're like a composer, it's like another, like you have the bassoon section. It's like a specific color you can use to paint your music, right?
Yes.
Like it doesn't have to be a constant, but if it's like with a few other things, it's really something special. Like, like you said, Opeth, like I'm an Opeth, freaking fanboy now. But, like every time they like do the Conscious Relief, it's like the best thing I've ever heard every time I hear it. It's just so effective when it's used correctly. And Sleepytime Gorilla Museum does that.
Yes, yes.
And that, I think, serves as a good segue to the El Evil, the next track, because my notes say like Nils' voice really impressed me on this one. Like he sounds absolutely terrific. Like both of his extreme singing and regular singing.
Yes.
And this song is so catchy also. The Let the Bells Ring chorus is so infectious. Like you're going to be singing it from first listen forward.
Yes. And that's what I have in my notes about this song is that by track 3, El Evil, this is one of the most addictive things I've heard in a while.
It is. It's great. I also noticed like listening to it on my stereo, like there's at one point there's like all the guitars are all of a sudden panned to the right and they stay there for a while. I thought that was kind of neat. I wasn't expecting that. They kind of like whiplash the guitars to the right, and then you hear that for a hot minute, and then everything kind of falls back into place. But I thought that was neat. It's like, oh, what happened? It's a good thing. But I thought that was kind of cool. Somewhat surprising color.
And then I'm looking again. Nils' growls are really, really well done on this album. As someone who usually doesn't dig this kind of stuff, I'm impressed at how musical it is. So it's interesting. We're having like a lot of the same reactions to this stuff. And this song segues into a track called Bells of Kith and Kin. And my first thought was, Time, the Pink Floyd song. Dark Side of the Moon.
That seems like a pretty obvious link that I didn't get initially, huh?
and then you read in the liner notes that it's a memorial. It's for people who were involved, friends of the band that were lost, and it's like a memorial. And I guess they played it on Ukrainian bells, which is like particularly stirring for this moment. And I kind of like how this album, like, you have these first 3 tracks that are super SGM. You know, it's like you could put this on for somebody and introduce them to the band.
100%.
And they'd understand what it was all about. But then I like how this album is brave enough to slow the pacing down within like the first 20 minutes or whatever. With Silverfish, which is like the track that comes right afterward. Because, you know, Bells of Kith and Kin, it's a very like meditative interlude.
It is, yeah. That's all I wrote about. Is like it's a nice tribute song, but I just wrote like it's a nice interlude. That's about it. Like, you know, I think it has a lot of meaning for the band, which is great, and I appreciate that. But, you know, it's nice to hear, like, it's nice contrast from the last couple of tunes into the next one.
Yeah. And for Silverfish, I remember the first time I listened to this, I thought, this is dragging the pacing down. Like, I want to keep with the fast paced stuff. I'm not sure how I feel about this, but after a couple of listens, this really started to appeal to me. And it's almost like this slow burn post-rock mode, and it's so different.
Yeah.
Like, what Carla brings to this band is a contrast to me that was sorely missing from the Free Salamander Exhibit album. Like, when that album came out, I remember really enjoying it, but it seemed like it was one color. And I like, you know, this song and then her song Hush Hush, which is later on the record, which I think is probably my favorite song on the album.
Oh, wow.
But I always just love these little moments where she comes in and she changes the texture completely, and it becomes like these haunting lullabies.
Yeah, this tune really clicked with me when I listened to it on my stereo for the first time. I think it's gorgeous. It's also, first of the lyrics I think are great. It's all part of it. The first verse is a Robert Louis Stevenson poem, and then the rest of it is Carla lyrics. It's just really pretty. It's a really nice and slow piece. It takes its time. It was originally written for Rabbit Rabbit Radio, the side project that Carla and Matthias Bossi did for a few years, which is really great. I listened to some of that stuff, and it's pretty awesome. It's like enormously diverse songs, you know, like stuff like for songwriting's sake.
I suspect I would like it a lot, but I've never heard it.
Yeah, they did a lot of stuff, actually. They released like an album, but also they did a lot of like crowdfunded stuff, and like had a Bandcamp page and all sorts of stuff. This reminded me of her other project, though, Tin Hat. I don't know if you know that one or not.
I've heard of it, but again, like I'm not super familiar with all the offshoots and side projects and stuff. But I would like to know more, because again, these 2 songs and her songs that are on Of Natural History are some of my favorite stuff that they've done. So I would certainly be interested. But I wrote down a quote from Carla that I find fascinating. I'm just going to read it. After the final verse, I had always wanted to conjure an image of all the stories breaking free from their bindings at once.
Yeah, I love that image too. It's so cool.
It is cool.
Yeah, and like, you know, she kind of nails that effect with the, like, I wrote in my notes that I loved the Eastern European vocal cascades at the end. Like, it is such a beautiful tonal color. It's kind of like Kate Bush in a way.
Yeah.
Like the Ninth Wave.
Yes.
But it doesn't sound like, you know, it's like different enough where it's its own thing, right? But it has, obviously, like, you hear the Eastern European vocals, you're like, oh, wait a minute, Kate. But
yeah. Well, she mentions that in the liner notes. The woman who sang on that just happened to write out of the blue, hey, you know, if there's anything you're working on, I'd love to sing on it. And she'd had that idea like the night before. So, this is a really special piece. And it also brings up another thing that I see a lot in the online discourse surrounding this record. And that's that I think some fans feel cheated. Maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, but some fans feel cheated because there's remakes of songs from other projects, supposedly, although I guess in a lot of cases, actually, the versions we're familiar with are remakes. These are the original versions. But yeah, I digress. But I've seen a lot of people that say like, oh, I don't like that this is, a Rabbit Rabbit Radio song on a Sleepytime Gorilla Museum album. But, and I can't speak, from experience because I haven't heard those other versions. I mean, other than A Gift. But my point is that I actually like this. I think it's a strength to show these are the original versions of the songs that we worked on 10 years ago. And, now you can compare these to the already released versions. I think this is a strength because it only serves to deepen the lore. It deepens, the world that Sleepytime Gorilla Museum have created.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I'm with you. I think like, an inclusion like this, sure, there could be some discourse. Oh, we've heard this already. But no, in the way you haven't, because this is a different arrangement. It's the same people doing a different arrangement. And like this is how like the piece was originally meant to be heard in a way.
Yeah.
You could make that argument, I think. But I think, expanding upon what you just said, I think a real like reason why this should still be included is because it serves the album really well. I think this album is one that's extremely well sequenced, and still both Silverfish and The Gift fit really well in this flow of the album and where they're placed, and they like serve the flow and also like my brain keeps saying mythos, but the way that the album flows and how it was stuff that was recorded mostly 10 to 12 years ago, but touched up and finished for this in a way that's modern. Like this is the modern Sleepytime Gorilla Museum, and these songs have a part to play in that part of the band.
Yeah,
you know?
It's kind of the closure continuation theme.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're finishing these up for closure, or is it, is there a future in this like that?
Yeah, exactly. And it's unknown. Like now they're on tour. Actually, they're currently playing where I am in New York right now tonight.
What?
Yeah, I obviously not there, but it's kind of a hike to go to Brooklyn from where I am. So
yeah, that
on a Monday for all days.
Yeah.
But next, if there's a next time, I'm there for sure.
But this this leads into a song that was previously released, and also infamously performed at Nearfest.
Yes.
Back in the of Natural History era, and that's a cover of This Heat, SPQR. And this is one piece I actually was familiar with the original. Were you familiar with the This Heat version prior?
Yes, but not very well. I have heard it before, and I have, I'm familiar with This Heat, but it's not like something that's like I'm super familiar with. It's like something I listen to like once every like couple years, come back to it. It's like, oh, this is great, and then that's it. But yeah, I like this cover. It's intense in a fun way.
Yes. Fun is a good way to put it, because when this piece ended last night, when I was doing my immersed listen, and that's, I put my phone away, and I just kind of leaned back and I soaked this record in. And as SPQR was ending, I had this big smile on my face because it's bonkers. Like the enthusiasm is just totally bonkers, in an infectious way. And, I didn't go back and listen to This Heat version.
I have not either, which is somewhat surprising for me.
But my instinct is that the SGM version is more spirited than the original. The original is a little bit, I hate to say like a funeral dirge, because it's not, but it doesn't have that bonkers energy. It's more serious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Much more serious. And I also like that we get Mo Stiano banging some pots and pans or whatever it is that he's doing.
Yeah, all that awesome auxiliary percussion is
Yeah.
so great. I think this tune also shows how well they are at arranging material.
Yes.
Like this is really well orchestrated. Like, this he is very much electronic, but this is like a full band doing
Yes.
all of this stuff, and it is terrifically arranged. It's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes. Yeah, and one very distinctive bass part that just kind of anchors the whole thing.
The first time I heard their version of it, the bass kind of annoyed me, but I liked it the second time. I was like, okay, it's fun. The bong, gong, 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 like through the whole song. It's like they're, lean into it, and they certainly do. It's great.
Yeah, I have in my notes, Dan's bass parts are massive.
They are.
Okay, so we move on to a piece that I described as Tom Waitsian.
Yeah, it is.
We must know more. And some of the vocal harmonies are like some kind of demented barbershop.
It's so great. It has that Ivesian quality again too.
Again, yeah.
I love this one. It's one of my favorites on the record. It just has like, it's really like storytelling in here is terrific. As you can picture like either robots or aliens like looking at the last human, like hence the album title, and like, oh, sure. We must know more. We hear it likes to be touched. We hear, all of these things about it. We must know more. Like, it's so cool. It eats, it sings, it bleeds. Like it's like a what's that Netflix series? The Love, Death, and Robots. It's like an episode of that. It's very cool. But this like super fun, bouncy marching band kind of barbershop. It's terrific.
Yeah, this is one of my album highlights for sure. And I even wrote that it's like a spiritual sequel to The Creature. It is. Natural History 100%. Track.
Yeah. As if it's not dark. It's not as dark. Although, being the last human alive may be a dark subject, but it's not like The Creature that's like, capitalism eating all of it.
Yeah, that's how I read it too.
Yeah.
Yep, that's how I read it as well. It was capitalism. Interesting. Okay. Apparently we share a brain.
Yes, we do. We are one, I guess.
Yeah, so sometimes it's your turn with the brain, and then other times it's mine.
You're right.
But tonight we're both we have equal share of the brain. So that's good. So, okay, moving on to The Gift. Now, this is a song that is very critical of the very medium that we are speaking to each other across.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's best viewed in its context, which Nils describes that it's from a discussion that occurred in the late 90s where he and Carla were kind of arguing against, the proliferation of information to every person, the equal. They were kind of arguing against it. And I like that Nils points out that both sides ended up kind of being right. It is this amazing thing, but it's also kind of a drag in a lot of ways too. And it's kind of like, and I even said in my notes, like, cause I just seen the movie Oppenheimer, that, you could see a thread taking the internet back to the atomic bomb, and forward to AI. Like it's technology, but what's the human cost? And, what is good? How do we define good? Is it the person who's good or bad, or is it the technology itself that's good or bad? And I think that's a lot of like the questions that are being asked in this song.
I think you're right. This is very well said, my friend.
Thank you.
I didn't say anything about the lyrics in my notes. However, I did appreciate them. What I did also appreciate is how amazingly Nils delivers all these vocals.
Yes.
There's a lot of words. It reminds me of Helpless Corpses in Action a little bit.
Yes.
With how so there's harsh vocals, but they're like, he's almost like rapid fire speaks the melody. It's kind of incredible. I listen to the song. I'm like, oh man, this is nuts. Like this tune rocks. I really enjoy this tune. But the way that he sings this is unbelievable. He is an extremely talented vocalist.
He is, yes, he is.
And he does the thing that my uncle does again, where he switches from clean to harsh, and they both sound great.
Yes. And this song, this was previous. This is another one that was previously released, and I am familiar with the Free Salamander Exhibit version. And I remember liking it. Like I like that version of it, but I like how this version, like there's some acoustic guitar in the bridge, like there's some shimmers in the bridge. And of course, Carla's presence on it gives it like a different underscoring, a different feeling.
Yeah, there's a lot of like new colors with this one. Like Carla brings a lot of like awesome like vocal, like, the two of them are like, they're not foils, but they complement each other so well.
Yeah.
It like really enhances all the material.
Yep. And to me, this is one of the standouts of both albums. This is one of the standouts of the Free Salamander Exhibit album. And it's one of the standouts of this album. And I love the phrase, which was on the back cover of Free Salamander Exhibit: "Utopian cyber hippie, this is your world now." I love that phrase.
It's great. It's so great. This is your day in the sun. This is your door, the way out. Like, it's so great.
It's like close the screen down and go outside and look at rocks. Like that's what this song is all about.
Yeah, pretty much.
I love it.
That's the gift. And then that tune segues into Hush Hush, which is, you said, is your favorite on the album.
It is my favorite song. Yeah. Yeah. To me, this is, here we go. The Uneasy Lullabies next to Nils' Fractured Metal. That's how I described.
That's a good descriptor.
This song, and it's very cinematic. It almost feels like a song from a different decade. Like it feels like you said, the Ninth Wave.
Yeah.
Like I hear that coming back in this tune as well. And I'd even commented that this is a counterpoint to The Gift. It's such a nice contrast and relief. And that's what this album's all about. It's all about light and dark. It's all about absurdity and earnestness. There is a lot of truth and honesty too, but there's also a lot of fun stuff and kind of silly stuff. And this is another song that I think is just, I think it's telling that they chose to make a video out of it, because to me, it really does represent the full spectrum that this album has on display.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a really good, like, if you're gonna pick a track to sample for someone, this might be the one to pick. This might be the one. It does encapsulate everything on the album. My only real note is I like this one, but I need to spin it more. This is the one I think I'm least familiar with for whatever reason. I don't know why, because I've heard the album the same number of times. I guess it needs more spins to really click. I like it a lot.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's the one that like is stuck with my brain the least for whatever reason.
Okay, interesting.
Unknown Michael reasons, I guess. But it's really strong, and it is a good summation of the whole album in one track. It just needs more time for me. That's all.
I get that. The back half of the album is kind of my favorite part of the record, but I kind of feel the same way. Like I'm not as familiar with it as the first half, and it also doesn't help that there aren't many notes on the last couple of songs. Like
no, they really aren't, except for like the Heron tune. There's plenty of notes on that one, but the other ones really don't get much information on.
There's not much information on these, but Save It is another. I compared it to The Golem by Mr. Bungle, because it has this quirky stop-start quality, and it's constantly throwing you off balance, and it's kind of funky.
Yeah. And
you could almost say that it doesn't fit with the rest of the material, other than it provides such a great moment to just kind of like, yeah, I'm enjoying this. Like, it's not making me think much. It's just kind of like, it brings up the mood of the album.
Yeah, it's another like quirky, silly song. I like it. I love how choppy all the rhythms are.
Yeah.
There's like a really killer, like chopped up groove going on. It's very like danceable.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And again, it's not one that I have a lot to say about, other than it's for pure enjoyment. I think it's one of my favorites. Like it's in the top 5 or top 3 of this record for me.
It's a blast.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. And you could put it on and get like a quick SGM fix in the middle of the day. If you're not really, you don't have time to sit down and listen to the whole album, you could put this on and it's like they almost could have released it as a single because it's just a little bite size.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Little bite size exhibit.
I think it's a cute little song that I think a lot of people who may not be into this kind of music would like also. Sure, because of how fun it is, It's got that spirit. And that segues into my favorite track on the album, which is Burn Into Light.
It's strong. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a strong piece.
I think for me, it's like quintessential Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. It's just freaking fantastic. It really resonates with me. There's a lot of there's like this, the outro I think is one of the coolest things on the album. There's a lot of like distorted production and a lot of really angular acoustic guitar all over the outro. Yeah. I think that's so cool.
Well, it kind of deconstructs it. Uh-oh.
I dropped my fidget toy. I can't sit still, so I'm sorry for
time.
Time.
Okay. Burn Into Light. Yeah. I feel much about this one as you do Hush Hush. And that's because, like I even have written here, this just sounds like classic SGM to me. And for an album like this, it's a good thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But I kind of feel the way that you do about Hush Hush in that even though I've heard this album a bunch of times, this one hasn't had enough time to gel in my brain. But I admire it. When I hear it, I'm like, man, this is like some of the best stuff on this album. Like it's a distillation of all these ideas. And it even has, like, to my mind, or to my ear, a distinctly 90s flavor. Like a warped version of Soundgarden or something like that.
Yeah. It kind of does have that. I don't know. I need to hear it again now because I might have another different take on it. You hear something different every time you hear this kind of music, which is the best part, really. It's like so much to discover every time you listen to this.
Yeah.
Something about this I really loved. We haven't said it yet, and I gotta say it now. The drums on this album are incredible. They are recorded so well, and they're played so unbelievably good. I noted, especially in this one, the drums in this tune are amazing. There's a really great cymbal work and groove right in the beginning of the song. It's like extremely infectious right from the get-go.
And that, I think I had something in my notes about the Salamander and Two Worlds song, that the toms, at one point he does like a tom sweep that just, it leaps right out of your speakers, especially, if you listen to it on a good system.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
It leaps right out and it cuts through the arrangement. And yeah, we have very little of criticism for this album.
Do you think we like it?
It's at risk of being gushing in my mind, but in our defense, nobody has put us up to this. We didn't get a freebie. We each bought our copies. We're fans and we really love this stuff.
Yeah.
And
music that speaks to us.
Yeah. So, I got the sense as I was listening to this, and I know that we haven't yet reached our summary, but I got the sense as I was listening to this that this may end up being not only my favorite Sleepytime Gorilla Museum album, and we'll get to that later on, but one of my favorite albums, period, because it's just so inventive, so creative, so much fun, so interesting that, as you said, there is something new kind of every time you come back to it. There's something new to be said or to be enjoyed. So this slides into a piece that is a little bit bittersweet for me. And it appears to be about the death of a father figure or a grandfather, somebody who's an older man within the family. And my family has gone through a series of losses, so this song brings a tear to my eye. It's just so sweet, and it's so earnest, and it's so real, and it's just about like Sleepytime Gorilla Museum always paint this apocalyptic world, but here we have this little glimmer of hope that's from a single human being. And I find that, so sweet, and it's cinematic in a way. Like, it almost sounds like a Kurosawa film.
It really is. It's totally like a beautiful, like, real human drama.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't like a dude who's dying, but he lived his life to serve the good of others. Like, to do good for others is what he wanted to do. And it's a beautiful, moving tribute. It's so great. This is one of my favorite songs simply for that reason.
It's one of mine too.
Yeah. It's got great trumpet and singing also. The best part for me is the lyrics. Like, the lyrics are really fantastic. I have to mention though the guitar riff for the first half of the song, especially in the beginning, it sounds almost exactly like a Godspeed You Black Emperor song. It's Rockets Fall on Rocket Falls from their third album, which is called Yankee UXO. I mean, it's almost the same thing. Like, it's like a dung-gun-ga, 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 dung-gun-ga. It's almost the same. It's not as, like, huge and cinematic as Sleepytime Gorilla, but it's almost the same thing. I don't know if it's an accident. Probably it is an accident, or it's, a nod to that tune. I don't really know, but I noticed it immediately, and I could not put it out of my head because I'm also a huge Godspeed fan. So I was like, well, here it is.
Well, I've seen where other listeners on the internet have pointed that out. And I've never heard that album.
Really?
The only Godspeed album I've heard is the Lift Your Skinny Fists album. And you played that album for me.
Yeah, that one's my favorite. That's a really special album for me. They both are, actually. Those are my two favorites.
And it's been a long time since I've heard them, so I need to revisit. But there was something about this track that reminded me of Rush in a weird way. Like,
that's interesting.
Like La Via Strangiato or Natural Science, one of those like long form late 70s Rush pieces. And I think it was like the ascending guitar licks. Now, it could very well be the riff that you're talking about, the Godspeed riff. I heard it as kind of Rush like, but maybe it's closer to the Godspeed that I haven't heard. But I also thought it would be a good opportunity to mention that the guitar tone is so well captured on this record. And I feel like I can say this because I spent the last year and a half learning how to mic up a guitar cabinet, like a Marshall amp. And so I can appreciate what, the effort it takes to capture that, to make it sound like it's sitting in the room with you. And a lot of these tones really it sounds like the amp is right there. Like it's so well captured and so well mixed. And for me, this is one of those songs that it almost has like a bluesy thing going on.
It really does have a bluesy thing. Yeah, you're right about the guitars. The guitars sound amazing on this album.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It feels like, I even said like this album is maybe a tiny bit long, but after 17 years, who cares? Like this feels like we're getting all this like angst of missing them for the past 17 years out.
Making up for lost time in a way,
Yeah. Which kind of brings us back to this last song, which isn't really a song. It's more of like an atmosphere. I said it's an atmospheric palate cleanser that honestly wouldn't be too far out of place on a Jack of the Clock album.
No, it wouldn't. It's called Rose Colored Song.
And it's just kind of like a nice atmospheric way to ruminate on all that you've heard. But it is very song-like. Like there's a clear melody, and it has all these little subsections that and a lot of interesting sound design, like backwards strumming, some interesting percussion, and it's a really good way to end a great record. And I know I had mentioned earlier that like every Sleepytime Gorilla Museum project for me has got to stand up to Of Natural History. And while I think that the first, we'll say side one of Natural History is untouchable. That's like my favorite thing they've ever done.
Yeah, it's really something else.
But I think for consistency's sake, this is the better record. I think that this has more. This is almost like that first 20 minutes for an hour. Like it sustains my it sustains my attention in the same way that first 20 minutes of Natural History does, but it does it for an entire record. And so, yeah, that I know that I'm at risk of hyperbole, but to me, this is their finest effort. And I say that after listening to it again and again over the course of the last week. I've heard it 3 or 4 times, and I really think this is their strongest work to date.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really impressive album. I don't know, for me, I don't think it comes quite close to A Natural History. For me, I think that album, in a way, like you were saying initially, is untouchable. I think it kind of is untouchable. That is like a really special album in my eyes. Like, the first 25 minutes of the album is unbelievable. I think the second half also has a lot of awesome merit that's kind of different from everything else that they've done. I also really, really love Baby Doctor.
I do, yeah.
That song is something else, and like the way that album ends is so neat with the sampled vocals. But going back to this record, I think this is like really, really good, and it's easily one of their best efforts. I think, like, for me, it's A Natural History, and this is like right below that with Glorious Times. They're kind of like neck and neck. Right now, I think Inglorious is a little more forward, just because I know it more. But I'm sure the more I listen to this album, I think the more I might rise up. And, I don't think it'll be, for me, better than A Natural History, but it's going to be pretty close. This is, also, I think this is the album to show someone if they want to check out this band. Like, this is the best point. By far, this is the most accessible and, most friendly to a newcomer by a long stretch. It just has more of the whimsy than any other album, which I think lends a great strength to this album. It's does, terrific,
yeah.
Yeah,
it does. All right, so to wrap up this review, Mike, would you recommend? Oh, I'm holding it the wrong way. Would you recommend Sleepytime Gorilla Museum of the Last Human Being?
You bet I would. If you couldn't tell from how we were gushing about this record, yes, this is easily a 9 or 9.5 out of 10. This album is amazing. And also, this is a 2024 release, which is very awesome. So go get it. Go buy it. New. It's worth it. Support this band.
And CDs and physical media vinyl for this band go quickly. Just try to buy a copy of Natural History on Discogs.
Good luck.
Good luck. I saw a copy of the vinyl for $150.
Oh my Lord, that's a lot.
And wow. So I'm kind of hoping that they repress that one because I no longer own it, and I would like to have that one on CD. So
yeah,
guys,
I'd like to repress it too.
You have 2 sales. Well, you may not buy it again.
I own it still. Maybe I'll get the vinyl, or I'll buy the vinyl from my uncle as a gift. There we go.
I'll buy it twice. 2 sales guaranteed if you release of Natural History on vinyl. Mike, it's been a real pleasure. Do you have anything else to say?
No, it's been
anything
great.
To add?
Like, subscribe, leave a comment for us. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you heard this album before?
Yes, tell us if you've heard this record. Mike, that is your job for every one of these reviews, is to make sure that people like and subscribe and comment and interact with us, because I'll never remember.
I'll be YouTube Mike. We got it.
YouTube Mike, meet YouTube Mike. Okay.
Here we go.
Well, as we used to say on Deep Cuts, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight, and we will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye, folks.
Bye-bye.
And thanks for watching. So we obviously, we'd mentioned that we had so many nice gushing things about the Sleepytime Gorilla Museum album that we almost were required to have a criticism. Otherwise, it kind of sounds like we're shilling, and we're not, because nobody sent us anything, nobody put us up to this review. It was totally voluntary. We wanted to do this. However, I am not the biggest fan of this artwork, if I'm totally honest.
Me neither.
It's unanimous then. It's a 10 out of 10 album, but it's okay. The artwork's okay.
Yeah. It fits their motif for sure. I kind of like the back illustrations, but I don't know, it just doesn't really flow so well as a cover. It does. I don't know. It's just not to my eye. You know.
There's something about the person who's on it that has an uncanny thing, and maybe that's what they were looking for, but it looks computer generated or something. And if that's what they wanted, that's what they wanted. But I kind of wish that they'd have used a photograph. That's pretty much my only, because there's a movie associated with this, and I maybe they could have used something from the film for the cover art. But it's such a minor complaint.
Yeah, it doesn't really detract anything from the music. We just happen to not like the album art so much, and that's fine. It's still a terrific record. So
it is.
Go support these guys. Also, this is the first release on their new own label called Avant Night, and there it is right there. Ian's got it up, and that's very awesome.
It is. Yeah, I looked this label up, Avant Night, and they essentially formed this just to release this record. So
yeah, it's super cool.
It's the music the record companies don't want you to hear.
That's right. They make their own company so they can make it.